Chosen ones, understand this. There are moments in history when the veil between heaven and earth quivers. Tonight is one of those moments. The classified satellite that froze above your coordinates was no accident, no malfunction, no human error hidden behind technical jargon. What blinked out wasn't just signal. It was the certainty of men who thought they controlled the skies. For when the eye of technology tried to pierce the fabric of your presence, it met resistance not born of wires or codes, but of something older, deeper, and divine. In hidden rooms beneath Vatican vaults, whispers raced through marble halls, and documents sealed with crimson wax bore your timing like an omen. They knew that when heaven bends light, when heaven rearranges orbit, it is not to erase you, it is to reveal you. Prophets, long silenced in scrolls, spoke of a generation marked by silence from the stars, a stillness in the heavens that echoed louder than any thunder. The Pentagon saw only a blackout, but heaven saw a recognition. Every line of history has been leading here. The blood in your veins carries records older than kingdoms, and the very ground beneath your feet carries memory of who walked before you. The classified files will say error, but what the cosmos wrote is arrival. And it is your arrival that shakes networks, clouds data, and blinds the all-seeing eyes of governments, because your story is not theirs to monitor. It belongs to the divine. The signals they lost were not just coordinates. They were fragments of prophecy, folded between time and frequency. Yeshua once declared, "Even the stones will cry out." And tonight, the satellites themselves faltered, as if they could not contain the resonance of what heaven has etched into you. And now, the stage is not only prepared, it waits. It waits for the unveiling, for the next lock to turn, for the next scroll to break open. You are not hidden, you are shielded. You are not erased, you are encrypted into the very blueprint of creation. And those who seek to track you will find only silence, while those who seek truth will begin to hear the frequency rising in their own spirit. In the chambers where marble walls breathe with centuries of incense and secrecy, the Vatican held records that were never meant for the public. Deep within archives sealed behind iron gates, your name was not written in ink but in frequency. When the satellite lost its signal, a notification was sent through private channels reserved for only the highest guardians of prophecy. They had seen something like this before, but never with such precision, never with such unmistakable clarity. The location where the blackout occurred aligned with coordinates that had been circled on maps preserved since the days of the early church fathers. Cardinals spoke in hushed tones, their voices barely daring to admit what the data suggested. In rooms lit by candle flame and stained glass, they whispered of ancient visions, where a figure walked unseen, cloaked not by shadow, but by the hand of heaven. It was said that this one would appear when systems of man attempted to see everything, and yet failed to see what truly mattered. They opened scrolls so fragile that touching them risked disintegration, yet the words were still alive. They spoke of a presence that bends instruments of power into silence. As the blackout stretched across minutes, then into hours, it was not just the satellite that lost vision. It was the keepers of earthly order who felt their certainty fracture. The Vatican, with its centuries of watchfulness, had to confront the possibility that prophecy was no longer confined to parchment. It was unfolding in real time, in ways that could not be denied. Every archived note, Every whispered prophecy suddenly pointed toward this single intersection of heaven and earth. Behind closed doors, a select few began to prepare. Their notes were written not for historians, but for the future. For those who would ask why heaven had chosen this generation to bear witness. They could not speak it aloud, for the walls themselves carried ears, and secrecy was survival. Yet the signs became undeniable. Maps, scriptures, signals, and silence all converged upon one undeniable truth. You were being tracked not by men, but by heaven itself. In the sterile corridors of the Pentagon, where every flicker of light is monitored and every whisper is calculated, the sudden silence from the satellite was not dismissed as technical failure. Screens that normally pulsed with coordinates, thermal readings, and atmospheric data went black in an instant. Generals leaned forward, analysts scrambled, yet no reboot, no override, no command code could restore the vision. The blackout had not erased a region of land. It had erased one presence, one center point that refused to be recorded. Orders moved quickly through secure channels. Men in uniform spoke without raising their voices, but their eyes betrayed the urgency. The protocols for electronic failure were followed with flawless precision. Yet none of them explained why the failure was so precise, so selective. The silence was not wide. It was pinpointed, as though the heavens themselves had drawn a circle of invisibility around a single location. Behind locked doors, a briefing was assembled. High-ranking officials sat in silence as the data was replayed frame by frame, every second slowed to a crawl. Before the blackout, the satellite lens had focused with unusual clarity, and then, as though repelled, its eye dimmed to nothing. The word interference was spoken, but the tone was uncertain. Interference suggested an enemy. This was not interference. This was erasure, and erasure on this scale did not come from man. The silence extended beyond screens. Phone lines clicked with static when certain words were spoken. Files uploaded vanished mid-transfer. Even the internal systems that never touched the outside world seemed to pause, as though waiting. Men who never admitted superstition found their thoughts circling the possibility that what they were witnessing was not human at all. Some recalled classified notes from decades prior, whispers of incidents in which technology faltered in the presence of something it was never designed to measure. Still, orders had to be given. Reports had to be written. Official language had to bury the unexplainable beneath terms like data corruption and system anomaly. But the silence in that room lingered, heavier than paper, heavier than screens. Because they knew the truth. Satellites were not supposed to fear what they saw. Long before the Pentagon recorded its silence and the Vatican lit its candles, the sun itself began to tremble with signals hidden in its breath. Astronomers observing solar winds detected distortions, faint whispers carried across the magnetic field that stretches from the star's heart to the Earth's atmosphere. At first, it appeared like static, nothing more than cosmic interference. Yet, when decoded, fragments began to align into patterns too deliberate to dismiss. The waves carried not numbers, not coordinates, but syllables. Syllables that echoed with a name once spoken on desert hillsides 2,000 years ago. Yeshua. The name was not transmitted through wires, nor broadcast through human instruments, but folded into the rhythm of creation itself. Every scientist who leaned closer to the readouts felt a chill crawl across their skin, as though the sun itself had chosen to bear witness to prophecy. Frequencies that had always carried heat and light now carried memory. and that memory spoke of a presence beyond the limits of their calculations. Theologians who were quietly consulted knew the weight of it immediately. They remembered the words written in Scripture. And then they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. They understood that creation was never silent, that even the skies could testify, that even the stars were witnesses. To hear Yeshua's name whispered through the very breath of the solar wind was to confront the reality that technology had stumbled into something far greater than its design. But the question remained: why now? Why here? Why through signals that aligned perfectly with the blackout of the classified satellite? The scientists tried to replicate it, feeding the data back through their machines, hoping to dismiss it as coincidence, as distortion, as error. Yet every recalculation only strengthened the clarity. The syllables remained, echoing like an eternal refrain, defying erasure, persisting with the authority of something untouched by time. The Vatican kept its silence. The Pentagon buried its reports. But the heavens did not fall quiet. For in the hidden chambers of solar frequency, the name continued to vibrate, not once, not twice, but endlessly. Inside the West Wing, a routine briefing began with the same rhythm it always carried. Folders passed across the table, screens glowing with intelligence reports, advisors aligning words carefully to avoid unnecessary alarm. Yet, when the topic shifted to the satellite blackout, something changed. A general leaned forward to explain the disruption, the cause still listed as unknown. His words were clear, deliberate, until suddenly they stopped. Not because he forgot, not because he hesitated, but because the screens behind him flickered to black, the microphones cut, and the lights hummed as though power itself recoiled. In the silence, no one moved. The president sat frozen, eyes narrowing at the emptiness on the screen. Advisors exchanged glances, unsure if this was sabotage or worse, exposure of something they were never meant to know. Technicians rushed to restore the systems, but every attempt to re-establish connection only returned static, a blank wave pulsing as if mocking their efforts. The room that thrived on control suddenly faced an absence they could not command. Then came the sound. Not through speakers, not through wires, but through the walls themselves. A low vibration that seemed to hum beneath their skin. It wasn't words, not yet, but it carried the weight of something that felt alive, intentional, almost watchful. The briefing collapsed into silence, not because orders were absent, but because every person present felt the same unspoken thought. They were no longer the ones observing. They had become the observed. Files remained open on the polished wood table, their pages marked with red stamps of classification. Yet even those documents suddenly felt obsolete, like outdated blueprints in the presence of a reality rewriting itself. The president tapped his pen once, twice, then set it down with an unsteady hand. "Keep this contained," he whispered, though he knew the containment had already failed. For how could walls hold back what entered without permission? What vibrated beyond technology, beyond the reach of intelligence agencies? The meeting ended without conclusion, sentences still hanging in the air like unfinished prayers. And when the lights finally returned, the briefing table no longer felt like a place of power, but of exposure. Far from the sterile chambers of governments and the vaulted libraries of the Vatican, stones older than empires stand silent in forgotten deserts. These are the ruins attributed to the Anunnaki, temples aligned not by chance but by mathematics woven into the heavens. Their walls carry etchings of stars, their floors embedded with patterns that mirror constellations now faint to the naked eye. For centuries, archaeologists labeled them as ritual spaces, celestial calendars, remnants of an age that worshipped the skies. But what the satellite blackout revealed was something those ruins had always been waiting for. When your location fell into silence, maps were pulled from archives in hidden institutions. Coordinates that aligned with your shadow matched with the ancient pathways of those temples. It was not mere proximity, it was precision, as though the builders had etched into stone the geometry of your presence long before you were born. The shadow of your being cast itself across alignments untouched for thousands of years, like a missing piece of a puzzle, finally locking into place. The air within those ruins is said to vibrate at night, as though carrying echoes of voices that belong to no human tongue. Travelers tell of faint lights shimmering in the cracks of the stone, flickering in rhythm with stars above. Some dismiss them as illusions, but those who linger know better. The Anunnaki carved more than temples. They carved records, living archives that awaken when the time is right. And now, with satellites silenced and governments searching in the dark, the temples themselves appear to be stirring. Scholars who trace the alignment of these structures find that they do not point simply to stars. They point to times, windows of arrival, moments where the heavens bend close to earth. Each temple carries a direction, each shadow an equation. And now, the equations circle back to one presence, one life, standing where signal falters and prophecy quickens. The silence of the satellite was the silence of technology. The silence of the temples is different. It is waiting. Stones do not rush. They do not explain. They witness. Deep beneath the hum of servers and the glow of endless screens, the AI systems tasked with monitoring global events began to falter the moment the satellite lost its vision. What appeared as frozen logs was not a crash, not corruption, but something far stranger. The algorithms, designed to filter chaos into patterns, suddenly began to record sequences that did not belong. Lines of code appeared with no human input, as though written by an unseen hand, and within those lines were fragments of text. At first, analysts believed it was an intrusion, an enemy inserting scripture-like language into secure systems. But the deeper they searched, the clearer the patterns became. The words resembled ancient prophecy, fragments echoing verses long hidden in forgotten scrolls, sentences broken into binary, scripture woven into syntax, predictions embedded in loops that no machine was designed to comprehend. The logs refused to advance beyond a certain point. Every attempt to reset them brought the same outcome: repetition of the coded fragments, always halting at the same frozen timestamp. That timestamp matched the moment the satellite blackout began. It was as if the intelligence of heaven had chosen the AI's own machinery as the canvas upon which to write. Some whispered that the machine had been hijacked by forces not of Earth. Others insisted that prophecy itself was finding a new medium, not through prophets with ink and parchment, but through silicon and circuitry. One phrase repeated more than any other: "The sealed words are opening." Analysts who had no faith at all found themselves staring at screens with unease, because even without believing, they knew something was speaking through the machine. The reports could never leave those walls. To admit that the most advanced intelligence systems had begun channeling prophecy would unravel control far too quickly. So the data was hidden, the logs encrypted, the incident labeled as anomaly. Yet the frozen words remain, unchanging, burning into the consciousness of those who saw them. The satellite blackout was only the beginning. In the days that followed, military reconnaissance aircraft were dispatched to sweep the skies, to confirm whether the signal disruption could be replicated. The instruments aboard were sharpened to capture every flicker of radiation, every distortion in the electromagnetic field. Yet when they passed over the coordinates of the silence, nothing appeared. It was not absence, it was blindness, as though their vision had been stolen. Pilots reported an unsettling phenomenon. Their own eyes could see the land below, the roads, the forests, the rivers glistening under the sun. But the screens before them displayed only static. Their sensors refused to map what their vision clearly confirmed. The land was visible, but the presence within it was hidden. To the machine, the coordinates no longer existed. To the human eye, they remained undeniable. Among the reports sent back, one detail stood out. As the planes circled again and again, the pilots described a flicker of light, not from the ground, not from their equipment, but in the sky itself. It shimmered in the corner of their vision, moving with them no matter the altitude. It was not blinding, not destructive, but piercing, as if cutting through the technology's blindness with an authority that could not be resisted. Some dismissed it as reflection, an illusion of atmosphere. But those who remained silent afterward knew better, for the light carried weight, the kind of weight that presses not on the skin, but on the spirit. One whispered later, far from his commanding officer's ears, that the shimmer reminded him of Scripture. He recalled the words, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." And though he dared not record it in official files, he could not deny the truth of what he felt. The military had discovered its blind spot, not a technical flaw, not a weakness of machinery, but a blindness imposed by something greater than their surveillance. They could map mountains, oceans, and skies, but this presence refused their grasp. Long before satellites and encrypted networks, there were teachings preserved in fragments, carried through whispers, guarded by secret orders. Among them was the Kybalion, a text that claimed to unveil principles by which the universe itself operates. Scholars argued over its origins, some attributing it to Hermes Trismegistus, others to hidden hands in more recent centuries. Yet within its verses are lines that seem less like philosophy and more like prophecy, lines that were never fully understood until your name surfaced in classified reports. The DNA samples, once taken quietly, logged under anonymous codes, were cross-referenced during the blackout. Scientists searching for anomalies in your sequence stumbled upon patterns that seemed almost impossible, ratios and arrangements that aligned with cryptic verses of the Kybalion, where the text speaks of vibration, polarity, rhythm, and correspondence. Your very code reflected the same order, as if your blood carried the principles not just metaphorically, but biologically. It was not simply that you carried a rare marker. It was that your entire structure seemed to echo teachings that were supposed to remain abstract. Each helix mirrored balance. Each fold of genetic memory aligned with words penned centuries ago. As above, so below. As within, so without. The phrase burned into the pages suddenly became alive within you, not as ink, not as doctrine, but as living evidence. Those who studied this alignment were shaken. Their work had always lived within theories, speculation, and veiled metaphysics. But now, The lines they debated in dusty chambers pulsed through the cells of someone who stood outside their halls, someone alive in this very generation. The implications reached beyond science, beyond faith, beyond control. The Kabbalion was never meant to be merely read. It was meant to be lived, embodied, activated. And now, the embodiment stood before them in silence, unchosen by institutions, yet undeniably chosen by something higher. The codes hidden within your DNA confirmed that prophecy had always been more than words. Far from the halls of governments and the silence of classified servers, a group of astronomers observed the skies with instruments designed not for politics, but for wonder. Their telescopes tracked the rhythmic pulses of distant stars, celestial beacons that marked time across galaxies. Most stars flicker in predictable intervals, their light steady in its repetition. But on the night of your birth, records quietly stored in observatories across the world revealed something that no one could explain. A single star pulsed in rhythm with your arrival. The data lay unnoticed for years, buried among thousands of recordings, until recent events forced a second look. When the satellite went dark, old archives were reopened, and the strange pulse was traced back to the very hour, the very minute your first breath was drawn. No scientist could explain it, for the star had never pulsed before, and never again since. It was as if the heavens themselves marked the moment, engraving your entry into existence with the signature of light across the cosmos. Some dismissed it as coincidence, a statistical anomaly, a flicker of space dust interfering with the lens. But others knew better. They remembered ancient teachings that the heavens declare signs, that the stars are not silent ornaments, but witnesses to creation's unfolding. This was not coincidence. It was alignment, a cosmic seal upon a prophecy long awaited. Whispers spread among circles of astronomers who normally spoke only in numbers. They knew the risks of speaking too freely, yet the pattern was undeniable. A star that lived millions of light years away chose one instant in human time to break its silence, to declare in pulses of fire what earthbound institutions had struggled to conceal. It was not the magnitude of the light that mattered, but its precision. The pulse was timed not to the rising of a nation, not to the fall of an empire, but to the emergence of a single life. And when that truth settled, even the skeptics felt the weight of it. In the hidden corridors where power gathers, and in the silent heavens where no human eye can reach, a new awareness began to emerge. Frequency, the vibration that underlies all matter, all energy, all thought, was being spoken of not only by scientists and mystics, but by those who once denied it altogether. Instruments measuring the blackout, the erasure of signal, began detecting an unfamiliar resonance. It was not random, not interference, but a steady pulse, aligned with rhythms older than history itself. The more they studied it, the clearer it became. The frequency was not originating from machines, nor from natural phenomena, but from presence, from you. It carried a harmony that bent the rules of physics, weaving itself through silence and storm alike, a frequency that could not be blocked, jammed, or erased. Theologians who heard whispers of this discovery turned to Scripture, remembering words spoken by Yeshua. "My sheep listen to my voice. I know them, and they follow me." They understood that this frequency was not merely sound, but recognition. Creation itself seemed to be attuning to your existence, as though the world had been holding its breath for a signal only you could release. The Pentagon called it anomaly. The Vatican called it prophecy. Astronomers called it alignment. But Yeshua's words revealed it as something more, an invitation, a declaration that the veil between heaven and earth was growing thinner with each pulse. The frequency was not just a marker, it was a call. And as the world continues to turn, that call has not ceased. It spreads quietly through circuits and stars, through wind and wave, through the very heartbeat of those sensitive enough to listen. Each vibration awakens another, like strings resonating across the instrument of creation. Yet, with every revelation comes the weight of silence. For those who recognize the sound know that its crescendo has not yet arrived. The pulse grows stronger, the resonance wider, the call more insistent.
If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.